I think, when you break down any list of yours and you put together any of these lists, you have to ask yourself, are you floor guy or are you ceiling guy? Because that's going to lead you into consistency. Like, that's your standard, and you can't have consistency without a standard. That's my standard, is that I love a high floor, and if you can give me some ceiling, let's book it. Garrett Wilson is my number one receiver this year because he's 100% flat out, straight up and down, high floor guy. And how do you become high floor guy in the National Football League playing wide receiver? Gotta run some routes, man. If you can run routes and create separation on your own, that's magical. That's magical in the National Football League. And that's why a lot of these guys are on this list, is because they create separation by themselves, or they have a skill that puts somebody over somebody else. When I look at Jameson Williams, he gets separation in a different kind of way than Garrett does. He's not the route runner that Garrett is, but Jameson has this explosive element. And then he's sort of a pretty good route runner. But that explosion aids in his route running. I wouldn't call Garrett the same type of explosive that Jameson is. Garrett is more quick, and I also favor quick guys. It's hard to defend quick. To defend explosion, you just kind of got to know where that straight line is going to go. But Jameson does have quickness. But Garrett is just so smooth with it. Like, you see this image of Amari Cooper when you watch him run these routes. These guys that can run a slant 5 different ways, Garrett Wilson is one of those guys. Plus, he got some yak ability. Plus, he can catch the football. Like, I'm a big fan of Garrett Wilson. And if Jameson Williams didn't get hurt, I think if people had Jameson as their number one receiver, I wouldn't hate it. If somebody got Jameson Williams as their number one receiver now, I wouldn't hate it because of his explosion, because of his playmaking, and he gives you a little bit of route running. My next four picks, right? What kind of separates these guys is consistency, just being able to do more, me seeing you do more, and having seen you do it. I'm not the biggest fan of the type of receiver that Drake London is, the bigger guy, but Drake London's still kind of smooth. He snatched the football out of the air. He does those big guy jump ball things. When you look at his game logs, his USC game logs, they feed him the football. He'll have like 20 targets, 15 catches for like 150 some yards, but I don't want to just make that stat or that number a part of his sole evaluation, because they got him running a lot of screens, and I don't think you're going to run a lot of screens with Drake London in the league. You're going to ask him to be a bigger guy. They run jet sweeps with Drake London, but you're not going to ask Drake London to run jet sweeps in the league. But he can do it. Is he a fluid route runner? I wouldn't say that. Is he, does he get separation? He gets separation with his body. But he doesn't get, he doesn't get route running separation or explosive separation. But he does have some nuance. He is a polished receiver with a big frame. The reason I have him over Chris Olave is because I think he does more than Chris. Now, Chris can do the underneath things for sure, but he really makes money running past people. But I don't want to just label him as a run past you guy, like a Henry Ruggs guy, or like one of these John Ross type characters where all he does is just run past people. He's not that guy necessarily. Olave still shows great hands. He still snatches footballs out of there. He actually has a lot of sideline contested catches or whatever. Will Steele is amazing. He actually has some sideline contested catches where okay, you don't expect the speed he got to catch passes like this, but he actually has some pretty good hands, pretty good ball skills. But how often does he get to use them? And when you see him use them, it's normally on the sideline where he manufactures a little bit of space throughout his offense. But Olave's main job is running past people. That's his job. If he had more of a polish on him, maybe I would have liked him a little better than Drake London. Drake London just knows how to be a polished big wide receiver one. I don't think Olave is that. I think Olave is more of a complimentary player to another number one guy. So that's why he's 4. George Pickens is interesting though. George Pickens. George Pickens, if he didn't get injured and he just did it a lot more, I say on the show all the time, man, when you watch a film on George Pickens, you really only got a handful of plays that you can really evaluate. He probably got about 5-6 plays 5-6 games, which is about 113 snaps or something like that, maybe 50 targets. But of those games, you really got to put your thinking cap on, and you got to focus, and you got to look at George Pickens and be like, hey, we only got limited film here. I may not never see you do this again, but I got to look at you and see that you did it, and then project. I see a lot of people that say George Pickens isn't a very quick or explosive player. He may not be the most quick or explosive player, but if you find the plays, you just skim through the plays, you dig through them records, and you just find it, you can see him being very sudden for his size, like 6'3", 210 or something. He's very sudden. He has these plays where he can run past people, where he explodes, where he's a yak guy. Size is incredible. Movement is incredible. Is he the most nuanced route runner in this class? No, but can he run routes? Sure. If you can run routes and get your own separation as a bigger player, you get points. The only reason he's not ranked over Olave and Drake London and Jameson and Garrett is because he hadn't done it very much. But we got to talk about the dudes at the bottom of this list, because 9 times out of 10, whoever's going to be the best receiver on this list depends on where they go. That's the unfortunate part.
Yeah.
So if Matt Ryan is gone and Garrett Wilson goes to Atlanta, you can't look at me and be like, well, Voch, George Pickens with Aaron Rodgers is doing better with Garrett Wilson, with whoever the hell going to be playing quarterback at, the Falcons or whatever. You can't look at me and make an honest assessment of that. Whoever goes to Kansas City, they might be the guy, or like Green Bay, they may be the best receiver in this class production wise based on that. And George Pickens really didn't even have the best quarterback in college neither. But if that dude would have just done it more, like if he didn't get hurt and he put out like another 11 games like worth of fire, you know what I mean? Just 11 more games, 12 more games, he'll probably be like my number 2 guy, number 2 or number 3 guy. Go ahead.
I think Pickens has immense upside to be a wide receiver. I think a wide receiver 1. I think he can handle that type of pressure and that type of target share as well. So, I like Pickens here in your top 5. I do. Even though I like Treylon Burks and Jahan Dotson and Sky Moore, I do like Pickens here.
There's a lot of receivers in this class, man. And, like I said, it just depends. And look, just Cowboy Nation too. And this is for whoever's listening right now, because I'm sure there's like some Ravens fans, Eagles fans, whoever you are on the volume and you're tuning in, you just want to get an idea for your team. George Pickens, it may not be there for your second round pick. Like if he makes it to the 40s, I think that's far. If he makes it, like if he's like a mid 30s at the least, kind of sort of, you know what I mean? But if you Cowboys and you're not drafting him at 24, you might not get him. He's not going to be there at 56. It's going to take the league to do some bad drafting for this dude to get to 56.
Well, he's got potential to be, Terry McLaurin, Metcalf, Cooper. They all went day 2.
Sure.
These are guys right now we look at as, high-end wide receivers. So, it's not. It wouldn't shock me because teams can't draft, like you said.
100%, Mr. Wolf. I was in a Twitter space the other day. Shouts out to our guy Nix. And there was somebody that had a comment on his Twitter space, and the person that was saying that they didn't like the idea that we were saying that there's 15 or 17 or so wide receivers that they feel like can come in and play right now. And I disagree. I think everybody on this list, is especially from a Cowboys perspective. Like if you went to if you went somewhere and you had to be the wide receiver 1, I don't think Olave would be a wide receiver 1 for you day 1. I don't think Treylon Burks would be a wide receiver 1 for you. But if you're the Cowboys and you got 2 receivers and you're looking for a third, either one of these guys will fit just fine as your third guy. Treylon Burks. So just because Treylon Burks is not in my top 5 don't mean that I hate him. It's just that wide receiver is deep this year. And, there's a very chicken or the egg question when we watch Arkansas's offense, right? Is Treylon Burks lined up in the slot and asked to do simple things because Treylon Burks is limited as a wide receiver? Or is it because the quarterback is limited as a quarterback? When you watch Treylon Burks, when you watch his film, you're basically going to see a guy that's either doing gadgety stuff or he's going to do a 50-50 ball thing, right? He's his deep 50-50 ball, or he's going to be like, we're going to do throw the ball to me in the flats. Give me the ball at running back. Give me the ball on the screen. Give me the ball on a hitch. He doesn't have the biggest route tree, but we're in a different age in football now. So now we don't just look at a guy and be like, okay, what are his Calvin Johnson traits? Once upon a time in the league, you had to have Calvin Johnson traits. You had to be 6'5", can run, and can catch. Nowadays, we don't look at that. We look at more so what can you do as opposed to what don't you do. That's why Deebo Samuel can be a guy in this league. So if you're Treylon Burks, if you have him on your team, you're not asking him to do super nuanced things with routes. You're not asking him to run post corners. You're not asking him to do a bunch of weird stuff. You're asking him to basically get short passes and not get tackled. You're asking him to get the ball and make something happen. Turn my 5-yard completion into a 10, 11, 15-yard play. That's what you're asking of Treylon Burks. And can he do it 100%? It's just that he's not as complete as the guys ahead of him. You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that. You don't have to be a complete player, and just because you're not a complete player doesn't mean you're going to be a bad player. Whether you're a productive player in the league or not depends on your situation and production. He might be fantasy football champ. He might win you a championship depending on where he goes. It's just that when I'm ranking wide receivers on my list, I got to consider the floor, I got to consider the ceiling, and I got to consider, are you complete right now? Jahan Dotson is a guy that's more technical than Treylon Burks, but he's a little further down my list because I think Treylon Burks does more than Jahan Dotson. If Treylon Burks was in my offense, I know exactly what I can do with him. And there's a lot of things I can do with Treylon Burks. I could do less things with Burks than I would Olave, but I could do more things with Burks than I can do Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson is, in my opinion, he's clearly going to be like a number 2 wide receiver guy. I can see Treylon Burks being the center of somebody's offense. Maybe not wide receiver 1 traditionally, but like Deebo is, right? Not saying that they're the same player, but I can see someone taking what they do in San Francisco, looking at Treylon Burks and go, okay, we just get you the ball and let you do yak things, you'll be fine. I can use Treylon Burks more ways than I can use Jahan Dotson. I don't see Jahan Dotson as a guy that could be a centerpiece of your offense, but as a guy that could be a number 2 receiver, run great routes, get separation, and be a fantastic contributor for you. I can definitely see Jahan Dotson being one of them guys. Sky Moore is interesting. Sky Moore is interesting because when you watch his tape, you kind of look at it and go, all right, am I missing something? You know what I mean? Because if you just write down all the things that Sky Moore does, right? If you just write the things down, he runs routes, he catches everything, he's hard to tackle. That's what you want. That's what you're looking for as a wide receiver. Can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? Those 3 things. Can you run, catch the? Can you run routes? Can you catch the ball? Can you not get tackled? Sky Moore is a beast at all those things. And a part of me wants to not be phony and put him ahead of Jahan Dotson. A part of me wants to be phony. But I think Jahan Dotson gives you a little more value because he can do more outside things than Sky Moore. Jahan Dotson can work outside and inside. Treylon Burks, Pickens, Olave. You could probably put London in a slot, but Williams, Wilson, in terms of what you do for your offense, I can see all those players in multiple spots. Jahan Dotson, Sky Moore is only playing slot for me, but he can be the best slot receiver in the league. To be fair, I think he's a pure slot receiver. That don't make him a bad player. That's just what I think he is in his role in the offense. So you got to ask yourself, how high do you draft a pure slot receiver?